Healthcare has been interesting because it's the last industry to really embrace technology. There is a lot of technology in care and in treatment. We're all familiar with medical record systems now, EMRs, patient portals, your MRI, your X-ray systems. But it's really the use of data that healthcare is now only truly embracing.
Welcome to the Agile Digital Transformation Podcast, where we explore different aspects of digital transformation and digital experience with your host, Tim Butera, Content and Community Manager at AgileDrop.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'm joined today by Richard RJ Kedziora, co-founder of Estenda Solutions. They're a leading company specializing in custom software and data analysis for healthcare and medical companies. And our topic for this episode is digital health. We'll start by defining this specific term, digital health, before diving deeper into topics such as regulated software development for healthcare, the current and the future impact of AI in this field, as well as some examples of Estenda's work with clients. So RJ, hello, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. Do you want to add anything here, or should we just go ahead and explain to our listeners what's really meant by digital health?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation about digital health. Just a few quick words. I came up through the software development programming ranks and then got into general project management, program management, and started my own company with a good friend, Estenda. And we just hit our 20th anniversary. So it's been quite a journey over the years. We've always focused on the idea of digital health before it was even called digital health. And as I've been reflecting these last few weeks over those 20 years, it's been an interesting journey because we went from a world where there was very little data to where now there's just so much data. What do you do with it? So it's been an interesting 2-decade long journey. But you asked the question, what is digital health? And it is an interesting question because it's a very broad category. Generally, I think of digital health as the use of technology, computers, algorithms to improve patient care, streamline processes, and improve overall management of people with various diseases. And it even gets into EMRs and billing. But you can also look at it as, X-rays, MRIs, and those types of things. Healthcare has been interesting because it's the last industry to really embrace technology. There is a lot of technology in care and in treatment. We're all familiar with medical record systems now, EMRs, patient portals, your MRI, your X-ray systems. But it's really the use of data that healthcare is now only truly embracing in this world. So how do we make use of data in this digital world to improve that patient care and streamline processes?
So data is definitely that's like the first note that I made for myself. The data and innovation in data and how it's handled has been crucial for the concept of digital health to even properly evolve. And also, as you mentioned, it's not the case that healthcare hasn't been using technology. It's just that because I don't know, I've heard from several people also on our podcast here as well. We talked about it, I think at least once or at least a few times, that healthcare tends to use a lot of outdated legacy tech that's super hard to replace. And then how do you then reconcile this with new tech that's data driven, while still having to kind of keep the system functioning in place because the patients still need that access to that healthcare, right? So it's not just something like that, okay, we can take down the site for like as long as the rebuild or redesign or rebrand is going to take, because then what's going to happen to healthcare and the patients that need access to that site?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting in healthcare, I've developed accounting systems and inventory management systems over the years. Even a railroad car scheduling system. You got to make sure the right railroad car gets to the right place to pick up materials and do shipping. And it's all very important. But in healthcare, you're dealing with the health and wellness of people. It makes a difference. And for that reason, even as we're talking about what is digital health, there are various levels in different ways of categorizing it. We have your EMRs, which captures electronic medical records, which captures the information around patients, but they were really designed around billing, and they're not well liked by the healthcare professionals out there. I think that's something that we'll see over the next decade, kind of thing, of how they evolve to improve use by the healthcare professionals. But then you get into medical devices, and you have the idea of software on a medical device. So think of your blood glucose meter or blood pressure cuff that's taking a reading from an individual and has an algorithm to manipulate that data. But as technology has improved even today, you now have software as a medical device. So it's there's no physical hardware involved, but you're actually providing, algorithms. So think of like insulin recommendation algorithms. And then, there's probably, if you go look in one of, the Apple store, Google store kind of thing, I've seen numbers 300, 400,000 digital health applications that are out
Mm.
there. But, do they work? Some do, some don't. But what's evolved in even like the last 5 years is this new idea of what are called digital therapeutics. And digital therapeutics are digital health apps, but are evidence based. They're clinically evaluated and actually reviewed and approved by the FDA here in the US or by European regulatory bodies to make sure that they actually do what they say they do. So the bar for use of these systems, this digital therapeutics, has been elevated. And I think of it's the difference between drugs versus supplements. So supplements, there's lots of them out there. They may work. There's not a lot of evidence around them, and that's what your general health apps are. But then you have medications that have gone through a rigorous testing, clinical trials, review by regulatory bodies. And that's the idea of a digital therapeutic, is that it has an elevated capability there.
So digital therapeutics are key to successful digital health.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the challenges in the world of healthcare is the ability to provide care to all of the people that need it. I was at a conference just last week and they were talking about mental health. And
Mm.
there's, we need more mental health professionals. It's a growing problem here in the US and globally. It's difficult to train all of those people and have them accessible. My wife happens to be in pediatrics, and the idea of a pediatric psychologist to help children with ideas of mental health, there's not a lot. And I live in the Philadelphia area. There's going to be some here in the Philadelphia, but if you move into the rural areas of Pennsylvania, it's going to be a lot harder to find
Mm.
those individuals that are properly trained. So if we can take the technology, the digital health apps, the digital therapeutics, which have been proven to make an impact in the lives of these people, that's how we're going to scale healthcare.
And what does the phrase or the term regulated software development means in the context of what we're discussing today?
I think about just regulated in software as a medical device, that digital therapeutic. These
Mm.
systems have the capability of impacting your life, hopefully for the good. We want to make sure that they're not going to do any harm. Doctors take an oath, do no harm. It's the same thing when we're talking about digital health applications. We want to make sure that we think it's going to do X, that it actually does and doesn't have any detrimental effects, and that even there's no biases in these, that it works for the audience that we're targeting. Then it works a lot with larger companies in the R&D groups, smaller startup companies, organizations, helping them develop innovative solutions. So as we come up with these ideas with our customers, you have to, it's one thing for me to say it works, or the customer like, oh, we have this really great idea, let's try this. There is clinical evidence, there's research around this, particular approach we're going to take, but you need to take it to clinical trial. And that's where that regulation comes in.
Mhm.
Estenda happens to be what's called ISO 13485 certified. And really, it's around having good software development processes. Everything is well structured, processes and procedures, very template driven to make sure that you consider all the different things that you need to.
Just before I ask you to tell me more about Estenda's work, I just want to take a quick detour because what you said about these systems having a direct impact on people's lives and this being the reason why it's so important to get things right here, this reminded me of the concept of business critical code, right? It's one thing if an engineer or whoever is working on a digital product screws something up while working on a, I don't know, messenger app, and it's something completely different if a similar bug happens, like on a plane landing system or on a cancer detection system or on a blood pressure measuring system. So really good points here about the importance of regulated software development here.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. And they were good examples. If you're a patient with diabetes, one of the treatments is taking insulin to help
Mhm.
control and lower your blood glucose levels. If you take too much, you can potentially die. So you have to be really careful when you're developing, insulin dosing algorithms, making recommendations. And in some cases, there are companies that are developing closed loop systems, which basically means the computer, the technology involved is making those decisions about how much insulin to inject into the person. And these have proven to work very well, but it's taken quite a while to get there to that level of technology.
Well, okay, now I think you should tell me a little bit more about maybe some of the most unique, most successful, most complex projects that you've done with Estenda.
We've been in business for 20 years now, so it's been an interesting journey. There are a lot of things I'd love to talk about, but because we do work on the innovative side of things,
Mhm.
signing NDAs is a very frequent thing
Oh
uh,
yeah.
that we do. But there are things I can talk about. One of our major projects we've been involved for 20 years now, is with the Joslin Diabetes Center and the Indian Health Services, which here in the United States is responsible for the Native American population. And if you are a person with diabetes, it can affect the microvascular, small blood vessels within your body, in particular our eyes. And there's a condition called diabetic retinopathy. It's the leading cause of preventable blindness. So if we can find
Mhm.
it, it is very treatable. So the project is called the Joslin Vision Network, JVN for short, but it's a system of cameras, in this case, digital cameras that take a photo of the retina of your eye, the back of your eye. And then those images are provided to trained professionals to assess for retinopathy. And if it's found, then we can treat it, kind of thing. That technology's been around for a while, and probably over the last 10 years or so, various vendors, including ourselves, have developing AI systems to read and evaluate those images. And one of the challenges in AI is bias. So you have to make sure that for your population, these technologies works. And one of the interesting things within the JVN project with these images of eyes that we're working on, you have to, different cameras take different types of images of the retina. So some of those systems that are available on the market look at a very narrow field, a small percentage of your eye. Our system is using ultra wide images, so you're seeing more of the back of your eye. So what can we learn about the patient's conditions and retinopathy from being able to see a wider percentage of the back of the eye. That's one example. We help, other people, companies develop weight loss solutions for, targeting primary care. So how can we help impact and change patient behavior? So, developing those solutions. So mobile phone is really the predominant interaction for the user, for the patient, but then the clinician has, web-based application that's integrated in their EMR to bring that data together. A lot of what we've done over those years, I mentioned, early on, this idea that 20 years ago, data was pretty sparse, particularly, when you looked at diabetes and you were doing finger sticks. People did not like, still people use finger sticks and it's, not a fun experience. But now there are also continuous, glucose meters, which, you know, are generating data every minute in some cases. So you've gone from this world of sparse, limited data to now just so much data you don't know what to meet, you don't know what to do. And think of a doctor, particularly here in the US, where you might have 7, 10 minutes with a patient and different patients come in with a different app, with a different device. It's like, what are you supposed to do as
Mhm.
a physician, as a nurse in that practice, a healthcare professional? You're just being overwhelmed with it. So it's the world of healthcare and what we work on these days, where it used to be how do we deal with limited data, it's now how do we deal with, just vast amounts of data and extracting the meaningful information from that data and surfacing it to those healthcare professionals so that they can have a meaningful impact in that patient's life. What do they really need to be aware of?
Well, both of these examples actually lead perfectly into the final question that I have for you today, RJ, which is related to the one of the hottest topics in tech today for the entire year, and maybe not just in tech, which is AI, obviously. And I'm guessing that, as you mentioned with the example of the blindness prevention technology, which uses AI, and we also know that AI is much more capable of handling large amounts of data in the right in the more efficient way than humans are. So I'm guessing that AI is and will continue to have a huge impact in the field of digital health. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. It's interesting in my personal history. When I was in college, I really thought I was going to go on and get a PhD in artificial intelligence.
Hmm.
And then I got my first job offer and went into the world of business and came back around, years later now, still, heavily involved in AI. And it's changed and morphed, over the years, different ways of looking at it. And generative AI, is the big thing that everybody's talking about, sort of an inflection point in terms of technology and capabilities. It does have its challenges, but using it today, many healthcare practitioners are starting to use it. And I think today it's around reducing the burden. How do I make practicing medicine better? You can use AI to summarize a medical record. As EMRs are now everywhere. You think of that patient encounter, the doctor, instead of talking to the patient, is looking at the computer and trying to type in all the notes, kind of thing. So are they paying as much attention to the patient as they could be?
Hmm.
Maybe. But with the power of AI, now that AI can listen to the conversation and record those notes. So now that provider, the healthcare professionals, can turn their attention more to those patients. So yeah, there's a lot of capabilities that are coming. You do have to be, aware of biases and the generative AI solutions these days. The generative AI solutions, have exhibit what they're calling hallucinations, making up data. So you do have to be careful and aware of that. But the whole idea of AI, and you alluded to it, is based on data. It's what data are you using to train these systems? How do you make them better and improve them? And yes, generative AI has some problems and challenges, but it's really new. If think of where, the first iPhone was in the early 2000s to what we have today. That's a very short span of time. So think of what generative AI in these other systems are capable of today, but think about what they're going to be capable of in 10 years from now.
Man, I can't even imagine. Like, I can't even imagine what they'll be capable of next year.
Very, very true. So I read a lot of science fiction, and it's one of those things that we tend to think the advancement of technology is going to be more than it really is in 2 years, but we tend to underestimate it where it's going to be in 10 years. So
Mhm.
it'll definitely be interesting.
That was a very, very good point. Yeah. And actually, a perfect note to finish the episode on, RJ. Just before we jump off the call, if our listeners wanted to learn more about you or learn more about Estenda, where can they do that?
Yeah, our website is estenda.com, estenda.com is good. And personally, to connect with me, LinkedIn is always good. Richard Kedziora is always probably the best place to reach out to me. So,
Awesome. Well, RJ, thanks again for a great conversation and have a great day.
you too. Thank you. Bye.
And well, to our listeners, that's all for this episode. Have a great day, everyone, and stay safe.
Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to check out our other episodes, you can find all of them at agiledrop.com/podcast, as well as on all the most popular podcasting platforms. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes, and don't forget to share the podcast with your friends and colleagues.